I found the photograph at an antique market in Northampton, Massachusetts. It was a Saturday in October, one of those perfect New England autumn days when the leaves are at their most brilliant and the air carries the scent of wood smoke and approaching winter. The market was being held near Smith College, with dealers selling various academic memorabilia and historical photographs. Among the collections was a sepia-toned photograph from the 1890s, perhaps 14 by 18 inches, depicting a group of 16 young women gathered outdoors, all wearing traditional academic gowns and square graduation caps. The setting appeared to be the courtyard of a university, with ivy-covered buildings faintly visible in the background. The women, likely in their early 20s, were arranged in 3 rows with composed, serious expressions typical of the era's formal portraits. Their dark robes contrasted sharply with the white blouses beneath. But when I looked closely at the back row, something made my blood run cold. One figure in the middle, where a head should have been, showed only an empty space, a disturbing void where facial features should exist. The graduation cap appeared to float above emptiness. The collar and white blouse were visible, but above them was nothing, just the background showing through as if no one stood there, though the body clearly occupied space in the photograph. The dealer noticed my interest. "That's the Mount Holyoke College class of 1890, she said quietly. "That photograph has one of the most disturbing stories I've encountered. The woman whose face is missing, her name was Catherine Aldridge. She killed herself during the final semester, just weeks before graduation. Her classmates insisted she be included in the graduation portrait anyway. But when the photograph was developed, her face had vanished, just gone, as if she had never been there. And then the hauntings began. On the back of the photograph, in faded ink, was written, 'Mount Holyoke College, class of 1890. May Catherine rest in peace,' and below that, in different, shakier handwriting, 'Catherine Aldridge, back row center, dead before graduation. She comes to us at night. I bought the photograph along with a box of materials, letters, diary entries, newspaper clippings, and accounts from the surviving classmates, for $2,000, knowing I had discovered something extraordinary and terrible. That evening in my hotel room, I examined the photograph under strong light. The absence where Catherine's face should have been was complete and unsettling. You could see the photograph's background, trees and buildings, showing through where her head should be. Her graduation cap appeared to float. Her neck and collar were visible, but above them was only void. It was as if she had been carefully erased from the image, except the technique used showed this was not a case of tampering or damage. The photograph was intact, but her face had simply never appeared when the plate was developed. I began reading through the materials. What emerged was one of the most chilling stories I had encountered. A student who took her own life before graduation, and whose restless spirit haunted her former classmates for decades. The earliest documents were letters describing Catherine's final months. From a letter by Margaret Whitman, Catherine's roommate, January 1890. "Dear Mother, I write to express my concern about my roommate, Catherine Aldridge. She has been increasingly melancholy this past month. She speaks of feeling overwhelmed by her studies, of doubts about her future, of a darkness that she says is consuming her. I try to comfort her, to remind her that we will graduate in just a few months, that her whole life is ahead of her. But she seems inconsolable. She says she feels she is already dead, that she is simply going through the motions of living. Last night I woke to find her standing at the window, staring out at nothing. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "Watching for when it will be time." When I asked what she meant, she would not answer. I am frightened for her mother. I do not know how to help her. Your concerned daughter, Margaret. From a letter by Professor Eleanor Morrison, March 1890. To the Dean of Students, I write to express deep concern about one of my students, Miss Catherine Aldridge. Her academic performance has deteriorated significantly this semester. She has missed numerous classes, failed to submit assignments, and when she does attend, she appears distracted and withdrawn. More concerning, she has begun making statements that suggest profound despair. In a recent essay, she wrote, "Death is not an ending, but a liberation from the prison of existence." When I asked her to explain, she said she was merely exploring philosophical concepts, but I fear her interest in death may be more personal. I recommend immediate intervention. I believe Miss Aldridge may be in danger of harming herself. Respectfully, Professor Eleanor Morrison. But the warnings came too late. From the Springfield Republican, April 15th, 1890. Mount Holyoke. Student dies by suicide. Miss Catherine Aldridge, 22, a senior at Mount Holyoke College, died yesterday after throwing herself from the bell tower of Mary Lyon Hall. She was found by a groundskeeper early in the morning. Miss Aldridge left a note in her dormitory room stating, "I cannot continue in this world. I seek the peace of the next. To my classmates, I am sorry I will not graduate with you, but I will be there in spirit." Classmates described Miss Aldridge as a brilliant but troubled student who had been increasingly withdrawn in recent months. She was just 6 weeks away from graduation. The college community is devastated by this tragedy. Funeral services will be held on April 18th. From the diary of Margaret Whitman, April 1890. April 16th, 1890. Catherine is dead. She jumped from the bell tower yesterday morning. They found her body on the stones below. I knew she was troubled. I tried to help her, but I did not understand how deep her despair ran. I did not realize she was planning to end her life. She left a note saying she would be with us in spirit at graduation. I do not know what she meant by that. All I know is that my friend is dead, and we will graduate without her. April 20th, 1890. Something strange happened last night. I woke to find Catherine standing at the foot of my bed, exactly as she looked when alive, wearing her graduation gown. She stared at me with empty eyes and whispered, "I will be there." I promised. Then she vanished. I am telling no one about this. They will think I am mad with grief. But I know what I saw. May 10th, 1890. The graduation portrait is scheduled for tomorrow. Several of us have discussed whether to include Catherine somehow, perhaps leaving an empty place for her, or having her name inscribed on the photograph. But then something odd occurred. We were discussing this in our dormitory, when we all heard Catherine's voice, clear and unmistakable, saying, "I will be in the photograph. I promised I would graduate with you." All 16 of us heard it. We looked at each other, frightened, but said nothing. From a letter by Professor Eleanor Morrison, May 1890. Dear Dean, I must report a deeply disturbing occurrence. During the graduation portrait session for the class of 1890, something inexplicable happened. The 16 surviving members of the class arranged themselves for the photograph. As the photographer prepared the exposure, several students claimed they could see Catherine Aldridge, who died by suicide in April, standing in the back row center position. I saw nothing. The photographer saw nothing. But all 16 students insisted Catherine was there, wearing her graduation gown, standing among them. The photographer proceeded with the exposure. When he developed the plate, he discovered something impossible. In the back row center position, where the students claimed Catherine had been standing, there was a figure wearing a graduation gown and cap. But where the face should have been, there was only void, an absence, a space where nothing existed. The photographer swears he did not manipulate the image. The plate is intact. There is no damage to explain this phenomenon. Where Catherine Aldridge's face should appear, there is simply nothing, as if she was present but not fully visible to the camera. The students are terrified. Several are saying Catherine kept her promise to be in the graduation photograph, that her spirit appeared and was partially captured by the camera. I do not know what to make of this. I am a woman of science and reason. But I cannot explain what occurred. Then the hauntings began in earnest. From the Diary of Margaret Whitman, June 1890. June 15th, 1890. We have all graduated and are preparing to leave Mount Holyoke. But Catherine will not let us go. She comes to us at night, to all 16 of us who were in the graduation photograph with her. We have compared experiences and confirmed that we are all experiencing the same haunting. Catherine appears at the foot of our beds, wearing her graduation gown, her face pale and her eyes empty. She speaks to us, always the same words. I graduated with you. Now you must help me rest. When we ask how we can help her, she vanishes without answering. I am terrified. I want to leave this place and never return, but I fear Catherine will follow wherever I go. From a letter by Sarah Thompson, class of 1890, October 1890. Dear Margaret, I write to ask if you too are being haunted by Catherine. She comes to me nearly every night now. She stands at my bedside, wearing that graduation gown, her face barely visible, shifting between presence and absence, like she appeared in the photograph. She speaks of her regret at dying before graduation, of how she tried to keep her promise to be there, of how she needs our help to finally rest. Last night she said something different. Look at the photograph. See what I have become. Until you acknowledge me, I cannot leave. I have looked at our graduation photograph many times. That void where her face should be terrifies me. It is as if she exists in some in-between state, present enough to appear in the photograph, but not fully there, caught between life and death, because she died before accomplishing what she had worked toward. Are the others experiencing this as well? Should we gather to discuss what to do? Your frightened friend, Sarah, from a newspaper article, The Springfield Republican, December 1890. Strange deaths among Mount Holyoke graduates. 2 members of Mount Holyoke College's class of 1890 have died under mysterious circumstances in the past month, both reporting being haunted by a deceased classmate before their deaths. Miss Elizabeth Morrison, 23, died in her sleep on November 15th with no apparent medical cause. Her sister reported that Miss Morrison had been claiming to see the ghost of Catherine Aldridge, a classmate who died by suicide in April. Miss Helen Bradford, 22, died on December 10th, after reportedly sleepwalking and falling downstairs. Her roommate stated that Miss Bradford had been increasingly disturbed by nightly visitations from Catherine Aldridge's spirit. Both women had been part of a graduation photograph in which an anomaly appeared, a figure in graduation gown with no visible face, which several students claimed was the spirit of Miss Aldridge. Other members of the class of 1890 have reported similar hauntings. Some have fled their homes to escape the apparition. From the Diary of Margaret Whitman, January 1891, January 20th, 1891. Elizabeth and Helen are dead. Catherine has killed them, or driven them to deaths that appear accidental but are not. The rest of us who were in that photograph, 14 of us now, have been corresponding frantically. We all agree. Catherine's spirit is destroying us one by one, because we left her behind, because we graduated without her, because she died before completing what she had worked so hard to achieve. We have decided to hold a memorial ceremony at Mount Holyoke to formally acknowledge Catherine as a graduate of the class of 1890, to give her the recognition she died seeking. Perhaps then she will rest. From the statement of Reverend William Harrison, February 1891. On February 15th, 1891, I presided over a memorial ceremony at Mount Holyoke College. 14 members of the class of 1890, all who survived from the original 16 graduates, gathered to formally recognize their deceased classmate, Catherine Aldridge, as a member of their graduating class. The ceremony was somber and deeply emotional. The women read statements acknowledging Catherine's academic achievements, expressing sorrow at her death, and declaring her an honorary member of the class of 1890. During the ceremony, multiple participants claimed to see Catherine's spirit standing among them, this time with her face fully visible, peaceful and smiling. When I turned to look where they indicated, I saw nothing, but all 14 women insisted Catherine was present and appeared at peace. After the ceremony concluded, the women examined the graduation photograph that had shown Catherine's faceless form. They reported that her face had now appeared in the image, fully visible, smiling, as if she had been there all along. I examined the photograph myself. I cannot explain what I observed. The figure that previously showed only void where a face should be now clearly displayed a young woman's features, peaceful, composed, complete. From a letter by Margaret Whitman, March 1891. Dear Mother, the hauntings have stopped. Since the memorial ceremony acknowledging Catherine as a graduate, none of us has seen her spirit. The photograph has changed. Her face is now visible in it, serene and at peace. We believe Catherine can finally rest. She kept her promise to graduate with us, and we have finally acknowledged that promise. Her spirit is at peace. But Elizabeth and Helen remain dead, casualties of Catherine's restless spirit, before we understood what she needed. And the rest of us will carry the memory of those terrible months forever. I am coming home next week. I will bring the graduation photograph with me. Though Catherine's face is now visible in it, I can never look at that image without remembering when it showed only void, evidence of a spirit caught between worlds, seeking recognition and peace. Your relieved daughter, Margaret. But that was not the end of the story. From a letter by Professor Eleanor Morrison, 1900. 10 years have passed since the haunting of the class of 1890. Of the 14 women who survived to perform the memorial ceremony for Catherine Aldridge, only 8 remain alive today. The others died in various ways, illnesses, accidents, and in 2 cases, suicide over the past decade. All reported experiencing renewed visitations from Catherine's spirit in the weeks before their deaths. It seems the memorial ceremony provided only temporary peace. Catherine's spirit remains restless, unable to fully leave this world because she died before completing her life's journey. And she continues to visit her former classmates, perhaps seeking companionship in death, as she was denied in life. I have examined the graduation photograph again recently. Catherine's face, which appeared in the image after the 1891 ceremony, seems to be fading once more. Where clear features were visible, I now see only a pale blur. It is as if she is slowly disappearing from the photograph again, returning to that state of absence. I fear for the remaining members of the class of 1890. I believe Catherine will not rest until all who graduated with her have joined her in death. From the Diary of Margaret Whitman, 1910, March 15th, 1910. I am 52 years old now. Of the 16 women who graduated from Mount Holyoke in 1890, I am one of only 3 still alive. Catherine has returned to me after all these years. She comes most nights now, standing at the foot of my bed, wearing that graduation gown. Her face shifts between visible and absent, between life and death. She whispers, "Soon you will join me. Soon we will all be together." I have looked at the graduation photograph recently. Catherine's face, which had appeared clearly after the memorial ceremony in 1891, is now completely gone again. Only that disturbing void remains where her features should be. It is as if the 20 years since her death have erased her from the image entirely. I believe I do not have much longer. Catherine is calling me, calling all of us who were in that photograph with her. She will not rest until we have all crossed over. I am not afraid any more. Perhaps death will bring the peace that Catherine sought and never found. Perhaps when we are all together on the other side, she will finally stop haunting us. From the Springfield Republican, November 1910. Last member of haunted class dies. Mrs. Margaret Whitman Harrison, 52, formerly of the Mount Holyoke College class of 1890, died peacefully in her sleep on November 10th. She was the last surviving member of a graduating class that was reportedly haunted for 20 years by the spirit of a classmate who had died by suicide before graduation. Mrs. Harrison's daughter reported that her mother had been visited nightly for months by what she described as the ghost of Catherine Aldridge, a classmate who jumped from a bell tower in April 1890, just weeks before graduation. With Mrs. Harrison's death, all 16 women who appeared in the class of 1890 graduation photograph are now deceased. Several died young under mysterious circumstances after reporting being haunted by Miss Aldridge's spirit. The graduation photograph itself has reportedly undergone inexplicable changes over the years. One figure, identified as Catherine Aldridge, alternately appeared with no face, then with clear features, then with fading features, and most recently, with no face at all. The photograph is now in the possession of Mount Holyoke College archives, where it remains a disturbing artifact of one student's tragedy and its alleged supernatural consequences. I spent months researching the case, consulting with paranormal researchers, historians of Victorian spiritualism, and psychologists studying group psychology and grief. What emerged was a story that straddled the line between psychological phenomenon and genuine supernatural occurrence. A case where multiple credible witnesses reported consistent experiences over decades. I wrote a comprehensive account examining the evidence, the various theoretical explanations, and the lasting impact on all involved. The book was titled The Headless Graduate, Catherine Aldridge, and the Haunting of the Class of 1890. The photograph from May 1890 appeared on the cover. Looking at it, knowing the story, it became one of the most disturbing images I had ever encountered. 16 young women in academic robes and graduation caps, proud members of Mount Holyoke's class of 1890. 15 of them showed clear, composed faces, the typical serious expressions of Victorian graduation portraits. But one figure in the back row center, Catherine Aldridge, who had killed herself 6 weeks before graduation, showed only void where her face should be. A disturbing absence, a space of nothingness, as if she existed but was not fully present. Her graduation cap floated above the void. Her collar and white blouse were visible. But where her head should be, there was only empty space showing the background trees and buildings. 16 women posed for this photograph. Only 15 were alive, but all 16 appeared in the image, one of them as an absence, a void, a presence defined by what was missing rather than what was there. And for 20 years after, that void seemed to have power. The women who survived graduation died one by one, many reporting visitations from Catherine's spirit before their deaths. All eventually died, the last in 1910, all claiming Catherine was calling them to join her. I received many letters in response to the book, some from skeptics offering psychological explanations, others from people who claimed similar experiences with haunted photographs. But one letter moved me most deeply. It was from the great-great-granddaughter of Margaret Whitman. Dear Dr. Morrison, thank you for researching and documenting my great-great-grandmother Margaret's terrifying experience. Margaret Whitman, later Margaret Harrison, was haunted by Catherine Aldridge's spirit for 20 years. She carried the guilt of not recognizing how deep Catherine's despair ran, of not preventing her suicide, of graduating without her. That graduation photograph hung in our family home for generations. I have examined it many times, and I can confirm what others have reported. The figure in the back row center, where Catherine stood, shows only void. No face, no head, just absence. It is one of the most disturbing images I have ever seen. Whether Catherine's spirit truly haunted her classmates, or whether grief and guilt created a shared psychological phenomenon that persisted for 20 years, I cannot say. But I know that photograph documents something extraordinary and terrible. A woman who died before achieving her goal, and whose presence and absence were somehow both captured on film. Thank you for honoring the memory of both Catherine Aldridge, who died too young, and the 16 women who tried to live with the consequences of her death. Sincerely, Eleanor Harrison Mitchell. The photograph now hangs in my study as a reminder of how tragedy can echo through decades, how one death can haunt the living, and how some images capture more than the visible world. 16 women at Mount Holyoke in 1890 posed for their graduation portrait. But one of them, Catherine Aldridge, back row center, had been dead for 6 weeks. She had killed herself before graduation, unable to bear the weight of her despair. Yet she appeared in the photograph anyway, her body visible, but her face completely absent, a void where her head should have been. This 1890 college photo looked normal at first glance, until you notice one of the students doesn't have a head, just empty space, just absence, just void. Until you learn she had died by suicide before graduation, and her spirit haunted every classmate in the photograph for 20 years. Until you understood this image captured something impossible, a dead woman standing among the living, present, and absent simultaneously, her faceless form a reminder of promises broken and lives cut short. A photograph that documented the boundary between life and death, that showed what cameras can sometimes capture, that human eyes cannot fully perceive, that proved some hauntings leave physical evidence in the images they inhabit. That's the eerie truth in this image from May 1890. The photo looked normal. Until they saw one of the students doesn't have a head.